This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Yes, it is. And welcome everybody to the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. I have with me Andrew from the Coruscant Radio Underground and Science Fictionary. You threw me off there for a second with your title there.
Well, I'm talking Star Wars. I got to switch it up.
Yeah, how you doing today?
Good. Just been
Excellent.
hanging out, watching some Dragon Con stuff.
Yeah, Dragon Con. And last year I promised you that I was going to go this year, but
I'm glad you didn't, because I didn't make it.
Exactly. But absolutely, one day I will make it down there. We will have a blast. And yeah, maybe next year. You said you mentioned that they're going to be selling tickets for Dragon Con after
Yeah, they should go on sale sometime this weekend, and I'm gonna. They go up incrementally throughout the year, so they're at their cheapest for the next couple of weeks. So as soon as they go on sale, I'm buying my tickets for next year.
Absolutely. Yeah, check it out. And yeah, C2E2 here in Chicago did the same thing. Their tickets are on sale. So a lot of, I always especially during the summer, obviously there's a lot of events throughout the country and all over the place. Is there a convention or a gathering that you wish that you could make an event that is kind of on your bucket list?
Yeah, well, C2E2 is one that I would love to make it to, and then there's a couple of big events in Florida every year. Pensacon's a big one, MechaCon. Yeah, there's a couple over there in Florida that are close, within driving distance for us, that I'd love to make it to.
Yeah, we a couple of years ago I was in St. Petersburg, and they just happened to have the first annual St. Petersburg Comic-Con, which Charles and I attended. It was by chance because the hotels, my in-laws, my father-in-law lived down there.
Okay.
And we were trying to figure out like where to stay, and everything was booked. And I'm like, what's going on? And the guy's like, there's a Comic-Con happening here. And my ears perked up. And I told the wife, you don't really need me on this trip, do you? Visiting your dad. Just tell him I said hi. Charles and I are heading to the Comic-Con. But yes, fun stuff. It's always great to kind of, walk around and see the sights and see other people, having fun and dressed up and, buying some stuff. It's always fun.
Yeah.
And of course, that you've got a big family. You've been doing the cosplay thing with Marisha and the kids. So very fantastic. It's a lot of fun.
Yep.
Let's see who's in the chat. Let's say hello to the chat. And I do want to say that we wanted to make this review a little interactive, a lot interactive. So if you guys have your thoughts, we'd love to put them on screen and then talk about it. I do have some notes. First time ever. Not. But yeah, I've got some notes. I wanted to kind of touch on some things. A very short episode, but let's see who's in the chat. We've got Comics and Cosmetics. Woohoo! She was first. She gets a cookie. Ubaldo's in there. What is up? How you doing? And then we've got our favorite and everyone's favorite, Amanda. Amanda, thank you very much for coming by. Who else we got in there? Justin Reynolds. Hey, how's it going, Justin? And he hasn't seen Ahsoka yet, so trying to get a feel for it. We'll definitely give you a feel for it. Obviously, we're going to be talking spoilers. We have been reviewing, throughout the entirety, I guess, of the Red 5 Network. We each have our shows, our discussions, and our takes on the Ahsoka show. So that being said, I wanted to get your overall take, your general view of this third episode. Is called Time to Fly.
Yeah.
I mentioned it was a short one, but what was your general thoughts on that?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was very much a live action. Of the 3 episodes, this was the most live action Rebels that we've gotten. I mean, there's a lot of stuff
Yeah.
that really harkens back to that. I love building on the way he's building on George Lucas's lore, both about what the Jedi are and the Force. Especially with the combat training that we see going on, we got some really cool little nods to the origins of George Lucas's concepts for the Jedi.
All right. Yes. So we'll talk about that in a second. I know there's been some controversial discussions on Twitter between all sorts of people, and some people say it's exactly what you said. Other people are saying that it's kind of a Pandora's box to be able to. We'll get to it, but I do want to talk about that. I wanted to get your take also on the title, "Time to Fly." I really kind of noticed a couple of things, and I was just kind of trying to tie together some I guess some plot points, some character points regarding the name of the title, and I feel like Dave Filoni kind of is probably more of a deep thinker when it comes to little things like that. Obviously, we know him from the animation. He sees a lot of little things, a lot of little details into it where he, it might grow into something else. Or what do you think about "Time to Fly" as a title for this episode? What do you think it's referring to?
I think it's maybe referring to a few things. I mean, I think just thematically that we spend pretty much the whole episode in the ship.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're getting space battles for the first time in this show. We're getting space whales flying in our shots for the first time. Oh, well, not really. I mean, we did see them in the first episode, but only obscured by clouds. So we get our space whales. We get I think maybe the biggest reference though is that it's maybe time for Sabine to fly. Maybe it's time for her to take the training wheels off and fly a little bit. I think, a lot of times when we have training moments, we have these moments like with Luke, like he's just not buying into this whole thing until he sees Yoda lift that X-Wing. He's still a little on the fence about the whole thing, and it kind of opens his eyes. And I think maybe Ahsoka's fight Ahsoka out on the wing of the ship in space, fighting starfighters, is maybe, Sabine gets that surprise moment, and maybe that's Sabine's eye-opening moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got Sabine, "Time to Fly," like you said, breaking her notion of limitations. There's an interesting line I think in the last episode where Ahsoka says, "I don't want Sabine to be a Jedi. I want her to be herself." And I think that speaks volumes as far as where we are heading with Sabine. Whether she turns out to be a Jedi Force sensitive or not, I find it interesting, and I think obviously the internet is up in arms about Sabine, actually being Force sensitive. But I think Disney and Lucasfilm has kind of a unique opportunity here to show people that, or fans that, it's okay if you're not, or it's okay if you're not, I guess it's okay to not be the chosen one. You can be like a regular person and still affect change. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're drawing some interesting. I mean, it's always been about. I guess Star Wars has never just been about the people that are Jedi doing the right thing or the big things, right? I mean, you have Han there from day one. That's not a Force sensitive character that's still pulled to do the right thing, and I think that it's what Filoni's good at doing is kind of opening these. I think kind of more thoughtful fantasy, thinking about what we as individuals do, and our individual responsibilities to combat evil.
Right. And I think that's a good message. I think it's a message where you solidify the concept of doing your part, doing your own thing, and not I don't know. Like I said, just you don't have to be a Jedi to do the right thing.
Right.
It's it's individual. What'd you think of the training sequence towards the top of the episode? I think that was kind of interesting too.
Yeah, I mean, we got a couple different things. I thought the stuff with Hu Yang was really interesting. I mean, I think
Yeah,
Hu Yang is just an interesting character because he's sort of our connection to the old Jedi, right?
right.
Like because he's been around for, I mean, as far as we know, 26,000 years. He's been around a long time. So I'm finding the stuff that because we're seeing training that we've never seen before. That was brand new stuff. And then the training with Ahsoka is very interesting. It's just a little bit different version of what we saw with Luke on the
Sure.
Millennium Falcon and A New Hope, but um, it's interesting, and I love, again, that's what I was kind of talking about at the top of the show was, um, I love the kind of harkening back to the samurai films
Mhm.
and that stuff. I love that Filoni loves taking those things that were George's inspiration and continuing to circle those inspirations.
Right. Let me ask you this, for a long time us fans thought that the Jedi were taught by other, new Jedi were taught by other Jedi. But then we've got this character who has been around forever and he's teaching Jedi in essence.
Yeah.
Does that bother you that a droid is set up in this series, and not just this series, I guess, but the animated show as well? But does it bother you that a mechanical being is training Jedi?
No. I mean, he's not necessarily training a lot of the mental and emotional aspects of being a Jedi, which he wouldn't understand. The emotional aspects of being a Jedi, he wouldn't understand. He's combat training.
Okay.
I so I mean, I guess the question is that any different than using a remote droid like we see
Right.
Luke train with
Sure.
in A New Hope?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And again, I just want to remind everyone in the chat, if you guys have questions or something that you guys notice, please put them up and I'll put them up on screen and we will talk about it. The elephant in the room, as far as Sabine's training, do you feel like she's going to end up becoming force sensitive? I know there's a little sequence in this episode where she's trying to reach out with the force, with the little teacup or whatever, and obviously it doesn't work. But where do you think this is going? I also have another observation. It almost seems like they're making a big deal about telling the audience that Sabine just sucks as a Jedi. She's never been good. Huang is telling her, I think 2 or 3 times already in 3 episodes, that she's the worst Jedi candidate that he's ever seen.
Yeah.
Do you feel like they're setting it up to, I don't know, maybe turn on a dime when it comes to that decision? Will she be force sensitive, or where do you think it's going?
Okay, so I do think that Filoni has hinted for a long time that Sabine might have some connection to the Force, and whether that connection is shut off by her Mandalorian training. Hu Yang also kind of hints that maybe there's something about the early Mandalorian training that just inhibits what it means to be a Jedi. That they're so diametrically opposed that it's hard to be both.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that, or it could just be that she's not, because we talked about this on our show last night, was we kind of have this thing with um Hu Yang and Ahsoka going on where Hu Yang keeps saying the Order did it this way, the Order did it this way, and I think Ahsoka's position is more like there is no order anymore. Like, this is
Right.
new. We're in totally new territory here. And so maybe, and I, again, Ahsoka tells Hu Yang, I don't need her to be a Jedi. I just need her to be herself. And I don't know don't know exactly yet what it is, and I'm kind of enjoying that. But I think there's been hints for a long time that Ahsoka has at least some connection to the Force.
Or Sabine.
Yes, Sabine.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then we kind of leaned into that. I mean, even if you go back to the old novels, the expanded universe novels, I mean, it was even indicated that characters like Han might have had some connection to the Force. That's what made him such a good pilot and what made
Mm,
him seem so lucky.
sure, sure. Yeah.
So I don't necessarily have an issue with making Sabine Force sensitive, but I'm hoping that we maybe see something new. And not that she's strong enough to be a full-blown Jedi, but that she can at least learn enough to keep her alive in this fight they're facing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Couple of comments in the chat. Let's see here. So yeah, Megan was just talking about a droid how I train with her VR headset. Not much different in that sense, of course. And you said it. I think just like the remote trainers. Let's see here. And Ubado's got this comment. You think with a droid seeing the doing the training, it will be a different approach. That was my initial thought. But I think I accept your reasoning where he's just doing the mechanical aspects of the
Yeah,
training, the fight styles, the handling of a weapon,
yeah,
that sort of thing. So I guess the spiritual aspect of the training is left to the actual Jedi to kind of help the Padawan, hone in. Um, so I kind of accept that. Alan at Grave Reviews says she wants to rely on her Mandalorian heritage more so than her Jedi heritage. Um, and I think going into the series, I totally forgot that she was Mandalorian. So
right.
that's interesting too. Yeah, everybody's eager to see if she's really if she's going to end up being force sensitive. Let's see here. What were we going to say?
Oh, it's just thinking, it's we talked about Chirrut Inway from Rogue One.
Right.
He's not he wasn't strong enough in the Force to be a Jedi, but he's still a worshiper of the Force, and he's somewhat of an adept. I mean, he has a strong connection to the Force. And again, I know you're leading into the conversation at some point about you know about all of that, but I think that it's an interesting point that yes, I think they ask a really important question. Like all living things are connected to the Force, and I think Sabine asks the appropriate question. Well, then why doesn't everyone use it?
Right, right. And I think she asks, she's almost being a surrogate for fans because I think we were asking the same thing,
Mhm.
especially during this sequence. Let's move into the scene with Hera and the delegates. I was watching I don't know if it was your show or somebody else's show. It seems like Star Wars does politics really well.
It does.
And we've seen it in Rogue One. Obviously, the prequels were all all about politics. But what do you think of that scene? I feel like Mon Mothma seems a bit reserved during this. Obviously, coming from the Andor series,
Yeah.
she's a little more feisty. But obviously, she's in a different situation here. But what did you think of that exchange between Hera and the senators there?
I think I think that maybe it did as good of a job as any other scene we've seen in any of the stuff that exists post Return of the Jedi. It's showing us how ineffectual this government is. I mean, Mon
Mm,
Mothma's not much more than a figurehead at this point. She
yeah.
doesn't have any real authority here. I think that's what the scene showed us is that Mon Mothma is a figurehead, and I really think that's a big part of what leads up to when you go back to the novels and to that's kind of what forces Leia's hand
Right.
and pulling away from the New Republic and just going and doing her own thing. So I kind of think we're going to get an echo of that with Hera.
Sure. Yeah. And again, I love the politics in Star Wars, so I'm looking forward to kind of teasing that out more. We get a little callback from the Resistance animated show, which I know not a lot of people saw that, but we get what was that? Kaz's Kazuto's dad.
Yep. Senator Ziono. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool. Again, it's like Resistance is one of those shows that I feel like not a lot of people saw. So maybe 3 people. But
yeah, I mean it's just different.
Yeah.
It's a little more kiddie than Filoni's stuff. And man, I know he had a hand in launching that series, but it really wasn't.
Right.
It really wasn't a Dave Filoni series.
Mm-hmm.
And it it was Star Wars animation without Dave Filoni, and it just didn't feel right.
All right, Danny, calm down.
But there was some. I do feel like there were some interesting storylines. It just the characters were all kind of silly.
Yeah, I think, and I watched it with my son. He was age appropriate. And it, again, yes, it was very kiddie. The animation style was very different. I remember the discourse back and forth, how people didn't like it. They really did start to introduce some really interesting storylines towards the end. A lot about loyalty between friends, and one character joins the First Order because she thinks that's the right choice, and the other friends are like, "What are you doing?"
Right.
So it could have been an interesting show if they let a 3rd season go, because I feel like there's a lot of lessons in there.
Yeah. I really kind of processed that through, the animated stuff through my kids a lot.
Yeah.
And, my kids enjoyed it. As soon as the episodes dropped, they were ready to watch it.
Sure.
But, I think if you asked all 3 of them, they would rank it as their least favorite animated series.
Sure. And speaking of animation, we finally get to see Jason Syndulla.
Yep.
He
does have green hair.
Yeah, I posted in on Twitter a while back that the animated Jason Syndulla kind of freaked me out a little bit. He had a weird looking look to him. But what did you think of seeing Jason Syndulla in the flesh?
Oh, I thought it was great. I really, really liked that. I'm glad they did it. I honestly, when Mon Mothma asks about Jason, and Hera's just kind of like, well, he's here on board somewhere, getting into trouble.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, so they're just going to give us that nod. We're not actually going to see him.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
when they had that conversation, I was like, okay, we're not going to see him. And then they walk right out in the hall, and there he is. I was kind of shocked. I thought it was cool. I thought I loved the touch of having him wearing a version of Kanan's pauldron.
Right. Yeah. And, one thing I will commend this series on, and it's something that I was really afraid of going into it. They're not pulling punches as far as introducing familiar elements of the animated series into this show. Obviously, Jason, they talked about, Ezra right away. And I was really afraid that there was going to be a lot of exposition, a lot of explaining to try to catch up, casual fans or people that just did not, watch the animated show, to kind of catch them up on this. But I feel I think and I don't know that, if anybody in the chat has not seen the animated show and think I'm wrong, let me know. But I think they're doing a good job explaining things. Yeah. And yes, Danny, everything freaks me out. So I wanted to ask you, because this is something that people have been arguing about to and fro on Twitter. Sabine asks Ahsoka, if the Force is everywhere, why can't everybody use it? Ahsoka's like, it is, but it just, you have to train, you have to be able to hone your skills, et cetera. And a lot of people say that that opens up a Pandora's box per se, because it takes away, I guess, the special nature of the Force, or the special nature of relationship between the Force and the user. I wanted to see what your thoughts are, because I know there are strong feelings, for it, and strong feelings against it, especially for us older fans that have really, I don't know, dove into, Force lore and things like that. What is your take on that?
So, I mean, I think so. We have really two different things at play here. One that we're not discussing in the show, which is midichlorian count, which we've already established in universe, basically is what regulates how strong your connection to the Force is. But everyone has some level of midichlorians. So everyone has some connection to the Force. It lives in all living things. So I think that this is just, I don't see this as anything more than a reiteration of what George established initially with the line that the Force abides in all living things.
Why do you? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I think the real difference here is I'm not getting the, oh, now everyone can use the Force vibe from this. That's not. I don't believe Filoni would go there, and it's not the vibe I'm getting at all, because it's the first question asked, or the first thing that Ahsoka says is, yeah, like there is some talent required, which I think she's referring to a natural talent, an innate, unteachable talent. Like, some people can do this and some people can't.
Right.
We're getting clear indications from Hu Yang that she doesn't have the type of connection to the Force that the Jedi would have found acceptable.
Right. Yeah, I think that's reasonable to assume. I was telling a friend, we were discussing this, and we're saying, I mean, I can change an outlet, an electrical outlet in my home. I can do it well and make sure everything is tight, but that doesn't make me an electrician. I just happen to know how to do it. I mean, I think. Why do you think that midichlorians are off the table at this point? Or do you think midichlorians are off the table?
So I don't think
the only time
midichlorians
you
are.
hear midichlorians at all are in the prequels.
There's one, I don't even remember what it was in recently. Maybe it was in Bad Batch, where we get a drop of M count. I believe it was in Bad Batch.
I have to look that up.
So I don't think that midichlorians are off the table, but I do feel like, because we have to remember, like, George never even brought midichlorians back up in the second two films, the second two prequel films. We talked about it one time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even George maybe felt afterwards the fan reaction was like, oh, it demystifies the Force, which I don't necessarily feel like. We wouldn't say that about God. Like, if there's things that we can know about God, I wouldn't say, well, that demystifies God. Like, he's still this thing we can't really understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of look at the same thing, with the Force. And I would say, yeah, we have an explanation of like how some people connect to it stronger than others. But I think when you look at Clone Wars, that they did make a lot of effort to kind of lean back into the mystical aspects of the Force, and the things about the Force that are difficult to understand, or that we're just unable to understand. With all the Mortis Force lore and all that. And
right.
So I don't think midichlorians are like off the table. I just feel like, I don't feel like there's any reason to like keep coming back to them. We know what they are. And I think that the part of the Force that Dave wants to accentuate in particular is the mystical side of the Force.
Right. And one thing I thought, in the real world, I'm gonna say something, and I think you'll understand what I mean. We have the pyramids in Egypt, and people are still asking, like, who built them, why were they built, what is their functionality. We have lost knowledge in the real world. Do you feel like maybe the whole midichlorians at this point in time might be a little bit of that lost knowledge in the Star Wars universe? Or is it a question of maybe interpreting the Force in a certain way, similar to how religion in the real world is interpreted by man?
Hmm. So, yeah, I mean, it's possible that we have some lost knowledge. It's also possible, when you kind of look at it, we know that the Jedi at their height, right, leading into the Galactic Civil War, into the war with the Empire, it's is a Jedi Order that's headed for collapse, right? They've lost what it is to be a Jedi.
Nicole just changed your name to Scott, by the way.
But the Jedi have become a bureaucratic, thing focused on this one planet. But they're not functioning the way the Jedi are supposed to function, and so maybe it's even that midi-chlorian count only became important once it moved away from strictly being about the individual in this religion. And as it became more of a bureaucratic thing, it's like, well, you don't measure up, so you can't be a part.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, it's interesting. I think we have to remind ourselves that these stories are taking place, there's a lot of time in between what we know and what we're seeing at this moment, especially if you compare, stories from the High Republic or stories about, the prequels. I want to say a quick hello to Price of Reason has joined us in the chat. Thank you very much, Price. He says that Sabine has 0 midichlorians. Who knows? That could end up being the
So
truth.
she's one of the Yuzon Vong then, right?
Oh, there you go. Getting into that aspect of things. But thank you, Price, for joining us. All right. Are you ready to talk about the elephant in the room? And I have one aspect of this short episode that made me kind of want to hide under the covers. And that would be the space battle, the spacewalk, when Ahsoka went out into space and flung around. And obviously, I mean, to me, it was like very animated, a very animated sequence animation.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I did kind of like close one eye and was a little like, oh, should she have done that? It's
Yeah.
weird. And it's funny because I was very vocal when it comes to logic in Star Wars on the small screen and motivation between characters when we talked about the Book of Boba Fett. I mentioned the fact that towards the end when they were trying to destroy that large droideka droid, that Boba Fett went back to Jabba's palace, grabbed the Rancor, rode it back, and then used that to destroy the droideka. When the Slave One was like right in the garage, he could have just grabbed that, flew over, and busted the robot in half a second.
Right.
So those things kind of bothered me, and there's a lot of people that are pointing out some similar lapses in judgment when it comes to characters. You've got Ahsoka flying around space on the ship, and these other ships are, we're engaged in a dogfight. Why don't they just freaking destroy the ship and be done with it? But I don't know why it doesn't bother me as much here. And it bothered me more as far as the logic of Star Wars. Am I getting soft, Andrew?
Maybe. Honestly, I mean, it just didn't bother me that much. Like, it's a little silly. It's like a scene out of Rebels. I mean, it is. It's like an animated scene, and
sure.
I guess with Filoni, I'm just not surprised that he went that direction. Like,
Right.
Because if you had done that exact same scene in Rebels, we'd all be cheering.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I don't know. I thought there could have been a little more logical reasoning behind it, and there really wasn't.
Yeah.
But
To each their own. I guess we'll see what happens next week. But the space whales, the Purgle, look pretty damn good on
yeah,
screen in live action in all their glory. I mean, talk about logic. Space whales, what the hell?
I
But
mean,
they look good.
they did. They looked very good. And I like how massive they look in live action.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard in animation. It was, you don't, it's different when it's put in live action and you see these ships flying next to them. I mean, they're enormous.
Yeah. And speaking of enormous, you've got the hyperspace ring at the end of the
Mhm.
episode there. We've got we've got a lot of things that were, it was a short episode, but I guess there
Yeah,
were, a couple of decent nuggets to kind of sink our teeth into. And the hyperspace engines, obviously everybody is speculating what they're going to be used for. They're going to head out to that other galaxy and bring back Thrawn. And all hell's going to break loose. But I know I mentioned in your show, was it last night, that maybe they were gonna strap in some space whales to that hyperspace engine and take
yeah.
off quicker. Because it almost seems like the hyperspace rings were kind of a one-way deal, and maybe the space whales are going to be used one way and then the engines are going to bring everybody back. But yeah, I mean, it's we'll see what happens. When do you think we're going to see Thrawn in the flesh?
At this point, I kind of feel like we're not gonna get to Thrawn till maybe the last 2 episodes.
And you know what sucks is that we've already seen him because of the trailer.
Right.
And it's like, again, another instance where, come on, guys, save a little surprise for the actual show. But
Right. Yeah, I don't feel like we're gonna see them until the end. I feel like finding Thrawn is the direct tie to the movie.
yeah,
I feel like Balin and Shin are big bads here, and Morgan are big bads here, and that Thrawn is we're still working towards Thrawn, and Thrawn will be a big bad for the movie.
yeah, I feel that too. And hopefully they'll fix him up a little better because he needs a little more
Yeah, it needs a little
Thrawn
work.
head. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe they'll be able to do more with a movie budget.
Sure. So I wanted to touch real fast on Balin. He's one of my favorite new characters in this show.
Mhm.
Obviously, actor passed away, but I hope he got to see the entirety of the series before he passed away. I know you can't plan on stuff like that, but Balin seems to still be at odds at some of the things that he's doing.
Yeah.
He I wonder if I don't want to use the R word, the redemption word, but I wonder if he's going to at some point really, regret everything that he's done and maybe join the rebellion per se. I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's kind of because we don't really know. It's kind of still a mystery exactly what Balin's objective is.
Mm,
He mentions power,
right.
but it's like power can mean a lot of things.
Yeah, Price says, I think Balin will be killed, and then Shin will end up leaving Morgan and joining Ahsoka. And then speaking of predictions, I mean, I feel like Sabine. I'm still going to hold on to to my prediction that Sabine somewhere in there is going to die, a horrible death, and that will that will galvanize the rest of the team to get together and we'll throw that storyline into the movies. But
Just crushed by a space whale.
crushed by space whales, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's a short episode, but like I said, it had some interesting little tidbits. I really enjoyed the training. I enjoyed the conversation between Sabine and Ahsoka. um yeah. Anything else? What about the chat? You guys are talking about cookies and baking baked items. Send me some. And Danny, no, I would hate for the that would be a crappy crossover. Get to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. No, thank you.
No, please don't do the Patton Oswalt arc.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, anything else, other characters that that you like?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get a lot of Balin in this episode.
Yeah.
I want to know. I mean, Shin Hathi, like, she's got a presence on screen,
Yeah.
and so that's, I'm finding her intriguing, even though we don't really know anything about her yet. But I'm finding this whole thing where Balin is, he's no longer a Jedi. He's at this point basically a mercenary,
Right.
because he has no, it's like the order's gone. He has no home. It's so, but I know, but she's still like rocking the Padawan braid,
Right.
and so he's still following some of the ways of the Jedi. So yeah, I find both of those characters to be really, really intriguing, and I hope we find out a lot more about them before it's over with.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued of their backstory. I mean, there's a scene in one of the trailers where Ahsoka is talking to Balin, and they mention Anakin. Obviously, 6 degrees of separation with Anakin. Everybody knows Anakin, but yeah, I'm intrigued. Do you think we'll get some connection between? Do you think Balin is going to tell Ahsoka that not only does he know Anakin, but he knows that Anakin and Thrawn worked together in the past?
See, I don't know, because so few people, just in the current lore, so few people know that Anakin survived and became Darth Vader. But at this point in the story, everyone knows. It's been dropped, like, it's galactic news at this point that, who Vader was. So, it's going to be, I'm curious to see what he actually knows. I mean, clearly he would have been a contemporary of Anakin. He would have known who he was.
Yeah.
But I'll be curious to know what he knows about Anakin becoming Vader.
Right. And yeah, that's one of the aspects of the prequel trilogy spilling over into, the stories in between the prequels and the original trilogy, that I find intriguing. The fact that, Anakin kind of just disappeared, and this Vader guy kind of showed up. I'm really intrigued at the concept of who knows for sure, obviously. But obviously, that Vader is my favorite character of any franchise. So it's interesting to me. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a short episode, so that'll make our episode kind of short. But any other final thoughts on this episode, or anybody in the chat wants to say anything? Final messages here. If not, I'd like to say thank you to everybody who joined us tonight. Andrew, why don't you tell folks what you have coming up on both of your channels? And
all right, so on Coruscant Radio Underground coming up, we're doing kind of a deep dive. We do have a deep dive coming up on good versus evil storytelling. It's going to kind of expand across storytelling, sci-fi and fantasy, but we're going to use Star Wars as our jumping off point. But just the importance of good versus evil storytelling in the modern day. In a day where everything seems to be trending towards the middle.
yeah.
And and we'll be doing all of our Ahsoka stuff, and we'll probably continue doing an immediate reaction panel immediately after the show because of the new time slot. And we're going to be moving our full reviews to Wednesday evening, I believe, starting this week.
Okay.
And then on the Science Fictionary, we are going to be doing we've got a lot of stuff coming up. We got a couple of trivia episodes coming up. If anybody in the chat wants to play some Cornetto trilogy trivia, let me know, because I definitely need a couple more for that. And we've got a big string of Muppet episodes coming. They were supposed to start this week. Marisha wasn't well, so we pushed it. I didn't want to start the series without her. So, but a lot of Muppet stuff coming up, including when the weather gets nicer, going up to the Jim Henson Boyhood Home exhibit.
Very nice. That's awesome. Are you doing those episodes live, or are they pre-recorded audio only?
It's going to be a mix, but most of them will be live.
Okay. Awesome. Great. And yeah, so we've got another guest next weekend, next Saturday. CJ, our friend CJ, is going to come on, and we're going to talk Ahsoka. But I also wanted to remind everybody, Tuesday at what's on Tuesday? You have something on Tuesday, right?
So on Tuesday, well, so we're kind of making Tuesday our normal live stream day, which right now it may just wind up being our Ahsoka immediate reactions. But we're kind of Tuesday, a lot of Tuesday time opened up, and so we're kind of jumping in there. And after Ahsoka's over, we will continue doing something on Tuesdays.
Sure. What time is your thing on Tuesday?
We're doing okay, so for now we are doing Tuesday late, like 9:00, because right now we're doing it at 9 Central. We're doing it after Ahsoka airs.
Okay. All right.
After Ahsoka's over, that may get pulled back to like a 7:00 start.
Gotcha. Because I'm trying to fit in. I've got my Kai Patterson interview that I'm going to present live, and I think I'm going to do it Tuesday night. Probably,
we won't,
you know,
we won't be on till late. So
yeah, so I'll do it maybe around 8 Central. You said you're going 9 Central?
Yeah, roughly 9. But
Okay.
depending on how long the Ahsoka episode is. I hadn't seen the time for this week.
Oh, that's right. I think it's going to be 47 minutes.
Yeah, so
yeah,
that'll probably put us at like 9, maybe 9:15 before we kick off.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, watch Twitter and watch the Red 5 announcements. Tuesday night, I am dropping the Kai Patterson live interview, and yeah, we're gonna ask him about the Kenobi, the Patterson cut. That big question: why did you do it? Why did you turn a series into a 2.5-hour movie? And I know a lot of people in the chat have already seen the Patterson cut in preparation for the interview. So a lot of fun, a lot of stuff happening here at the Red 5 Network. Andrew, real fast, tell people where people can find you guys.
Okay. You can find me on Twitter at crew_podcast or at sci_fictionary. So you can find us there. We have audio podcasts for both shows that are on all the podcatchers. So wherever you want to listen, it should be there. And then both shows are on YouTube under the Science Fictionary podcast.
Excellent. And you can find me here at the Scarif podcast. Just tell your smart speaker to play the latest Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. Live shows Tuesday night with friends, or I'm sorry, Saturday nights with friends. As long as the Ahsoka show is happening, we'll think of some other stuff to talk about when the show ends. But Scarif Live to Saturday nights, and our regular audio drops on Thursday nights. We got some good topics coming up. So Thursday is going to be the Kai Patterson interview in audio form, and I've got a big contest. I showed it. I think I showed it last week. I'll be giving away this guy, the Bad Batch, the Marauder. I love this ship.
Yeah, very cool ship.
It's a cool ship. So I'll be giving away that. Please listen to the episode on Thursday for details. Along with my interview with Kai Patterson. But Kai Patterson will be, I'll be doing that show live on Tuesday. We'll be bringing you that interview. So absolutely, again, find the rest of us of the Red 5 Network at bio.link/Red5. Until next time, again, thank you guys for joining me this Saturday to talk about a little Star Wars, a little Ahsoka, and everything in between. Until next time, this is Ro, that's Andrew, and that is the Scuttlebutt. Talk to you guys later.